Welcome everyone, join us today as we explore the journey and legacy of Marc Hunter, the charismatic frontman of the legendary New Zealand-Australian rock band Dragon. So let's dive in. Marc Alexander Hunter, born the 7th of September 1953, in Taumarunui, New Zealand. He was zodiac sign Virgo. Born in Taumarunui, a small New Zealand town of around 6,000 people at the heart of a sheep farming region in the central North Island, Marc was raised in a musical household. His father Stuart played clarinet on weekends, while his part Fijian mother Voi was a pianist. He grew up alongside his three brothers, older brother Todd and younger siblings Ross and Brett. From a young age, the brothers joined the family band while still in primary school, Todd on guitar, Marc on drums, and all four contributing vocals. By high school, Marc and Todd had moved on to performing in a cabaret band led by saxophonist Des Parks. In 1970, after finishing school, Marc's brother Todd moved to Hamilton for Teachers College, playing in short-lived bands before heading to Auckland in 1972 to pursue original music while surviving as a professional musician. His band, Staff, played in a nightclub, named for how they felt treated. With New Zealand's first major outdoor festival, the Great Ngaruawahia Music Festival, approaching, Todd saw an opportunity. He rebranded the band as Dragon, a name suggested by Graham Collins after an I Ching session, and landed a spot at the January 1973 event alongside Black Sabbath, Fairport Convention, and an unknown Split Enz. Though their performance went unnoticed, Dragon was born. By mid-1973, Neil Story replaced drummer Neil Reynolds, Ivan Thompson took over on keyboards, and they found their frontman, 19-year-old, 6'3" Marc Hunter, replacing founding singer and pianist Graham Collins. Having drummed in cabaret bands since leaving school, Marc had occasionally sang. Fronting a rock band was a new challenge, but his towering presence, powerful voice, confidence, and sharp wit made him a natural. With Marc now fronting Dragon, the band spent a year refining their progressive rock sound while playing enough covers to stay employed in Auckland's nightclub scene. By early 1974, they secured a deal with Phonogram, and under Rick Shadwell's guidance, recorded Universal Radio at Stebbing Studios. Released in June 1974, the album was one of the few local rock records that year, selling a solid 4,000 copies. Though caught between prog and folk rock, Universal Radio set Dragon apart from cover bands. Wellington promoter Graham Nesbitt booked him for university tours, where original music had a better reception. The band's confidence and theatrics grew, with Marc leading wild stage antics. During performances of Wheat Bix, the album's standout track, he would dramatically chop up cereal boxes, showering the audience in Wheat Bix. In late 1974, Dragon recorded Scented Gardens for the Blind, blending prog with punchier tracks like Vermilion Cellars. Soon after, guitarist Robert Taylor replaced Ivan Thompson, bringing a funkier edge. With Taylor's Education as their next single, Dragon toured hard but outgrew New Zealand. So in May 1975, they left for Sydney, unprepared for the challenge ahead. Determined to make it, they brought in New Zealand keyboardist and songwriter Paul Hewson with them. Dragon struggled at first, dropped by Vertigo after a failed single and robbed of their equipment in Paddington. Grinding through Sydney's wine bar circuit, they caught the eye of New Zealand expat Peter Dawkins, CBS producer and A&R manager. Tipped off by Ariel's Mike Rudd, he signed them to CBS's Portrait label and produced single, this time, their breakthrough hit. With frequent Countdown and Sounds appearances, Dragon quickly became one of Australia's top acts of the late 1970s. Under Dawkins, Dragon scored a string of hits from 1976 to 1979, mostly penned by Paul Hewson. These included Get That Jive, Sunshine, Are You Old Enough, which reached number 1, I'm Still in Love with You, and April Sun in Cuba, which reached number 2, held back by Mull of Kintyre from number 1 position. Their albums Sunshine, Running Free, which went platinum, and O Zambezi were major successes. Ironically, the band often clashed with Dawkins over the pop-oriented singles. Hewson even threatened to quit if Are You Old Enough was released. On stage, Dragon was brilliant but sometimes chaotic, with Marc as the focal point. His striking presence, androgynous good looks, and fearlessness in front of hostile audiences made him unforgettable. Their rock and roll antics, fueled by drugs, became infamous. Before arriving in Australia, their manager was jailed for drug trafficking, and drummer Neil Story died of a heroin overdose shortly after this time was released. Despite this, the band pushed on, replacing Story with Kerry Jacobson. At their peak, Marc and Paul Hewson reportedly maintained $200 a day drug habits, and Dragon was linked to the notorious Mr. Asia drug syndicate. By 1978, Dragon was one of Australia's top 5 acts, and America seemed like the next logical step. But their US tour supporting the Johnny Winter Band was disastrous. Facing hostile crowds, Marc's unpredictable behavior took over, culminating in a notorious gig in Austin, Texas, where they were pelted off stage after Marc became abusive, taunting the audience, while Winter's band bet on who would shoot him first. Despite the American tour failure, Dragon remained huge in Australia and scored another top 10 hit in early 1979, even after Marc was imprisoned in Mount Eden Prison due to his drug and alcohol addictions. However, years of excess had taken their toll, especially on Marc, whose voice was failing. With Marc spiraling and Todd as the only functional member, Todd was forced to fire Marc in 1979 to save him. They replaced him with a sax player and electric violinist, but Dragon limped on for just 9 more months, releasing one final album, Powerplay, before splitting. Marc, having cut back on excess, embarked on a moderately successful solo career in the early 80s. He scored hits with Island Nights in 1979 and Big City Talk in 1981, releasing albums Fiji Bitter in 1979 and Communication later in 1986, and collaborating with the Party Boys. Marc and Dragon reunited for a tour to pay off debts but decided to stay together. Marc, working with producer Alan Mansfield, co-wrote and released Rain in 1984, which became a top 10 hit in Australia, charted in the US, and gained popularity on college radio. With renewed focus and a second chance, they cleaned house, leading to the departure of Robert Taylor and Kerry Jacobson. Rain secured them an album deal with Polygram's Mercury label, and their album Dreams of Ordinary Men, produced by Todd Rundgren, was a success. Dragon toured Europe with Tina Turner, and continued to record and tour through the 90s, releasing Bondi Road in 1989, and Incarnations in 1995. Marc also released 2 more albums, Night and Day, and Talk to Strangers. In November 1997, just before a 40-date Australasian tour with Dragon, tragically Marc was diagnosed with malignant throat cancer. Friends quickly rallied around him, and Renee Geyer organized a benefit concert to help pay for his treatment and provide for his wife and children. Night of the Hunter, in February 1998 at the Palais Theatre in St Kilda, led artists to perform Dragon classics. Tex Perkins and Friends did Are You Old Enough, Chris Wilson sang O Zambezi, Paul Kelly and Renee Geyer performed I'm Still in Love with You, Snout did Rain, and Colin Hay wrote a new song in Marc's honor. The finale, April Sun in Cuba, featured John Farnham and his band, with Todd on bass. The crowd erupted when Renee Geyer brought Marc on stage for his final performance. Another benefit, the Good Vibrations concert, took place soon after in Sydney, featuring Glenn Shorrock, James Rain, Ross Wilson, Todd Hunter, Alan Mansfield, and more. Men at Work reunited, and the remaining members of INXS performed live for the first time since Michael Hutchins' death. Marc couldn't attend, as he was in Korea preparing for surgery, but sent a letter read to the crowd. The concert was taped and a 2-CD set was quickly released. In his final months, Marc was surrounded by family and friends while undergoing various treatments, including several alternative medicine approaches. He also visited a traditional Korean medicine clinic to undergo Qi, an ancient metaphysical healing process. Marc reflected, I have thought a lot about the possibility of dying. Now I believe it doesn't really matter when or where you die, but how you live your life. Sadly, on July 17, 1998, Marc passed away peacefully in his sleep at a hospital in Bury, New South Wales, at the age of 44. He is survived by his wife fashion designer Wendy Heather, their children Jackson and Isabella, who are also successful singers and DJs, and his son Titus from a previous 9-year relationship with Annie Burton, a rock music writer. His memorial service, held on July 29 at Sydney's St Andrew's Cathedral, was attended by 700 mourners, including many music industry stars, with tributes performed by Glenn Shorrock, Mark Williams, and Wendy Matthews. And there you have it. Though his journey was cut short, Marc Hunter's legacy remains stronger than ever. From his rise to fame to the struggles behind the spotlight, he was adored by fans and lovers of Dragon worldwide. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to celebrate more legends of music. Take care and bye for now.